Welcome to another episode of Your Best Life podcast. I'm Julie, and my husband Pete and I are coaches who help you discover your life calling. In today's episode, Pete and I discuss the letter E in our Quest's acronym. E stands for emotional grid, or your personality. We're going to share with you how your emotional grid is important to understanding your calling and how you can get to know yourself better through knowing your personality type. And for those of you watching our podcast video online today, you'll get a chance to see our two little lab puppy visitors. They're still babies, so they're sleeping most of the time, but they're super cute. All right, let's get started. Welcome to Your Best Life podcast, where we help you discover your calling so you can live with purpose and clarity. We're Pete and Julie Morrill, your guides, mentors, and lifelong adventurers, and we're here to help you find your true north.
We got some friends joining us. This is two puppies that are about 3 weeks old. And you know what? The number one thing that people ask us about, they ask, is it the right color? And you know what? The number one thing that they should be asking us about, does it have the right personality? Temperament is way more important than color. This is a fox red. This is a dark yellow puppy. They're super cute right now. And people get a little bit carried away with the cuteness of our puppies, and they forget to ask the key thing, which is temperament, which is a little bit of kind of what we're talking about today. We're going to let you enjoy the puppies as we talk. If one of them starts climbing out, let us know, and we'll grab it.
So the reason we started with puppies, though, is because we own a business called Marble Mountain Kennels. You want to tell them a little bit about it first?
Sure. We breed and train Labrador retrievers to be great family dogs as well as great hunting dogs.
Okay, good. So what is the E in quests? It goes Q, the 3 questions, then U, the unique story, and then E is what?
Yeah, it's emotional grid. You skipped right over this great segue that I gave you, which is the temperament of the puppies. Temperament, really, it's your emotional grid. It's your personality, really, in kind of common. But I like the term emotional grid because a grid means it's kind of what you see things through. The emotions that you bring to life, the personality that you and others perceive of you. And look, we're getting a little bit of personality from our friends back there.
You still want them to climb out.
And that's so crucial. If you think about it, your friends, you know them by their personality more than almost anything else. Not very many people describe you as a blonde lady. They describe you as, oh, she's really upbeat and fun to be with, So that's what people's perceptions are, right? And that's how they describe us.
And why do you think emotional grid has anything to do with finding our calling?
Yeah. So your emotional grid or your personality kind of changes the way you see everything. It changes the way you see people. It changes the way you see your interaction with other people. It changes the way you see challenges or difficulties or accomplishments. Some people are very driven towards tasks. Some people are very driven towards relationships. It's very much like our dogs. We have some dogs that you just let them out of the pen and they are out searching for what they're supposed to be doing. And some of them just gravitate right around you. They're very relationally focused. That's just one of the things that emotional grid measures. But obviously that influences everything you do in life, including your calling, and very significantly your calling.
How have you seen your emotional grid affect your calling?
So yeah, in certain tests, they would categorize me as an eagle. In other tests, they'd categorize me as an 8, which is this is the person that sees the big picture. This is kind of the strategist. This is a person that doesn't get bogged down in maybe the emotional side of life too much.
And does well under pressure.
And does, because I don't get bogged down in the emotional side, and does well with teams but I'm not the number one connecting person. I'm the number one directing person. I'm always better if I've got somebody that's working with me that's more of a connection. And I almost always have, almost every position I've been in, I've had a woman who can look at the team in terms of relationships and give me, oh, the boat is sinking in terms of morale, or hey, yeah, everybody's doing good. This would be a good time to celebrate. I'm better at seeing the task that needs to be accomplished. I'm better at directing the big picture. I hate when I get down in the minutia of detail. Do you ever? Yeah.
But I was going to say, you also, because you see the big picture, you often miss out on the small nuances of emotional temperament of the group. Maybe.
Yeah. I almost see those as an obstacle, and in some ways they are. And as long as somebody's repairing that obstacle for me, let's keep moving. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any examples of a famous person whose emotional grid was important to their calling?
Well, there's two people that kind of jump out at me. Steve Harvey.
Yeah.
I think he had his calling when he was like in first grade. His teacher said, "What do you want to be?" And I want you to write it on. And he said, "I want to be on TV." So that was his calling.
But his calling was shot down by that teacher.
It was shot by that, and somewhat legitimately. He stuttered. Nobody in his community was on TV. There was no fame or anything. But in spite of all of those things, his personality is probably one of the most likable people on TV, and so they just have thrown, once
opportunities at him.
Once the TV executives realized what they had, which was a gold mine in terms of a personality. He's got great humor, he's got great common sense, he's got great social intuitiveness. He knows who he can pick on and who,
He's got a lot of wisdom too, so he can be serious.
Correct. Yeah. And the other one is Jimmy Fallon. Probably one of the most likable people. The host of the Tonight Show, but far more of a host. He's an entertainer because he gets up and he entertains with his fellow. He plays games with them. He is very good at the musical side of interacting with guests. But he always, and he's one of these guys that can sincerely say, "You're my best friend right now."
Right.
And for those people
like
that he's interviewing, I think they all feel very close to him, and obviously he would probably consider them very good friends
for that moment,
or even for the rest of their life. But while he's interacting with them, if you're talking with somebody that's encouraging and your best friend, you're going to share better. You're going to share more fully who you are, and that's what the audience wants to see when somebody's interviewing. So I think both of those guys have leveraged their personality. They're famous people, obviously. Not fame doesn't have to, or personality doesn't have to be associated with fame. But those are two guys that everybody would know.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a situation where people didn't really know each other or understand each other until they got to know each other's emotional grid, their personalities, and then they really understood each other?
We did this routinely every summer. So I was a camp director for 20 years. And during that time, we would take kids, most of them college kids, most of them who didn't know each other. They were coming from maybe one or two had relationships before. So 30 or 40 kids every summer that we needed to make into a team. And one of the very first things that we did is we took them through what we call the DISC test. And that just gave them labels to understand, oh, I get why this person is so uptight about this part of the job. And I get why they don't care that much about this part of the job. And a lot of times when there was conflict resolution, I would talk to them and I would say, this person is a beaver. And so they're very concerned about the details. So why don't you try to pretend that you care about those details and give them more of the detail type jobs? And then you can focus more. You're an otter. You like to play. So if they're getting their details covered, in other words, if kids are showing up on time, the schedule is being adhered to, somebody explains the safety rules, that person can be at ease.
Mm-hmm.
Now the otter can go and play with the kids, and guess what? They'll bring that other person in to be more otter-like during that time. But had they not checked all the boxes, had they not thought it through the safety things, had they not made sure everybody was there that was supposed to be there, they would have been a little bit nervous, a little bit uptight, a little bit frustrated.
So you're talking about otters and beavers. So, and you mentioned an eagle. So I think we do need to explain a little bit about the DISC. But first, I want to mention that the DISC assessment first came from the idea of Hippocrates back in 400 something BC, when he came up with the phlegmatic, he called them the four temperaments. So phlegmatic, choleric, melancholic, and
Sanguine.
Thank you. So now, if you can explain how those relate to the DISC assessment and to the animals.
So this just shows your personality. You need to go back and
into the history
and to the
bit.
history. You've got a little bit of a beaver in there that wants to check the boxes.
More than a little.
Yeah. And I want to say, okay, let's just
get on with it.
Let's get to the main point, because my personality wants to get things done, right?
Well, I do too, but not as much as you.
Yeah.
I want a little backstory.
Right. So the thing I like about the DISC test is it's simple, and we make it even more simple. We don't use words like cleric. We use words like eagle, and our sanguine is our otter, and our phlegmatic is our horse, and our what is the beaver?
The beaver is the melancholy.
Melancholy is the beaver, and so we assign the names to those very quickly. We'll take our students through the test, and it's a test that basically says how or do they relate to the task that needs to be done and the other people around them. And it's really, what I like about it is it's simple enough that, I can say that's an eagle. I'm a confusing personality type because I'm an eagle beaver with a little bit of horse in me, right? I just am not, I don't have any otter. I'm not a playful person. Most people wouldn't call me up and say, okay, let's go out on a fun, just to talk. But I can, and nobody is 100% one way or the other for the most part. And so that's what the DISC test is. I like it because it's been around forever, as you said, but it has very practical and very easy to understand diagnosis of people. You have a different test, which is called the Enneagram, a little bit more complicated and a little bit more nuanced. Why don't you explain a little bit about that?
So I like the Enneagram. I want to say I do like the DISC assessment as well, if you want to get just quick and easy and kind of surfacey. But the Enneagram is deeper. If you want to dig a little deeper, it breaks up personalities into 9 different temperaments, and then it can break it up down to 27. So it can get a little bit more emotionally deep, I guess, in your understanding. So I like the Enneagram too, but we use both. For this particular, the workshops that we do for True Northwest. The other test that I also really like is the Myers-Briggs assessment. However, it's so deep that
we got one of our puppies having a dream back there.
It's so deep and so detailed that it's a little too much for our purposes, like in a group setting. But when I've done individual coaching, I will have them take the MBTI, the Myers-Briggs type indicator it's called. So I think it's just helpful for getting to really understand a person and for really getting to understand yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm going to set that aside and just say we like the Enneagram and the DISC assessment.
Mm-hmm. And it's amazing how popular they are. But here's what I would say is their popularity is a little bit wasted. In other words, I think most people love to take the test. On our website, it's the number one thing that people are interested in is that I want to know about my personality. But then they kind of leave it there. They go, wow, that cool. Really, I really got some insight. But they leave it there. Partially because the other people, the other players in their life don't necessarily have the same terminology. And that's one of the advantages I had with this camp is everybody came in at the same time. We're going to give everybody the same terminology.
Everybody knew their animal name.
Right. And, if you were coming on one of our workshops or seminars, we would give you labels. So you'd know everybody around the table and you'd kind of say, oh, yeah, don't forget he's an eagle horse or whatever. And the other thing I like about it is or the thing that I think falls short, I should say, is people don't relate it to if they're having a conflict, it's probably because the person is very like them or very dislike them. So one of those two are probably true. And it's amazing how many times it's very like, even though there may be a veneer of difference between the two people. There's a lot of tendencies that are very similar.
So let's just give our listeners an example, because you are an eagle with a good
probably more
dose
beaver.
Of beaver. You think you're even more beaver than eagle? I don't think so.
No. I'm right now I'm definitely more eagle.
Right.
And probably most of my life I've been more eagle, but there have been times, and that's one of the things with all these personalities. If you put in a different position, usually your personality plays out a little bit differently. So you emphasize things differently. Nothing wrong with that, but probably at my core, I'm more eagle than anything else.
And what am I?
You're more beaver than anything else. Melancholy, so she's got a lot of creativity, but is cautious about sharing that. Doesn't need to influence, where an eagle really needs to influence. You need to organize. And you need to feel things. It needs to be authentic and needs to be real.
But I guess that's melancholic, or the beaver, but it also is a little bit of the horse.
Yeah, you've got phlegmatic in there too. Yeah. Which is that the horse is kind of that faithful friend who they're very consistent and they're very even tempered.
That's why I don't have as much of that.
It's not as great a definition of you.
Exactly.
But you can rely on the horse. They like the slow and steady relationships and all that.
Yeah.
So,
but an example is I'm melancholic, so I'm the beaver personality, and I'm very detail oriented. I really I'm task oriented. I want to sit down, do my work, and not be interrupted.
Yeah.
You also have that trait. So we're similar in that way, and we can get on each other's nerves if we interrupt each other. So neither of us like it.
We both are task driven, and so we have to remind ourselves to make the relationship a priority.
Yeah.
And when we do, we're okay with that, as long as we can release a responsibility for task. I think that's for both of us pretty important is, okay, I feel good. A lot of times we will start on even just a trip we often go to Medford, Oregon. And we'll start and we'll identify what we want to accomplish. And then sometimes we'll identify when we want to stop accomplishing things and focus on our relationship a little bit more.
When does this turn into a date?
Right.
When you start opening the car door for me. Oh, we're on a date now.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
but for us, it's pretty important to signpost that, right?
It is. And we both agree with that.
For somebody that's a phlegmatic or somebody that is sanguine, it's less important. They just think relationships should overlap into everything. Yeah. And we kind of, if it was honest, we think relationships get in the way sometimes of getting tasks done, and they
It
can.
can.
Yeah.
Well, for sure, but are tasks really that important all the time? We have to really work on life balance of, we should be more relational.
Which is the very thing that I think personality tests should do.
Yes.
Should tell you where you should play your strength and where you should recognize your weakness.
Good.
And you should kind of figure out, who is it that I'm interacting with? What do they value? For example, the beaver likes to do things right. The eagle likes to get things done. I want to have them done right, but that's not as important to me as let's get it done. But you could care less if it gets done if it's done poorly. So you have a little bit in there that wants you to get across the finish line, but for me, that's the major motivation.
However, there's enough beaver in you to where you also like to get it done right.
If it's done poorly,
you get upset.
Yeah.
Like taking videos and pictures of puppies.
They're not always this quiet or cute.
This is one of those things where I will shoot over and over and over to get the best video of a puppy. And I think you would be more like, let's just get it done.
Well, she wants it best. Here's the difference. You want it best because it's right and it looks good. I want it best because it sells puppies.
Right.
So I'm the bigger picture, right?
Right.
You're the smaller picture. Both of them. If
Aesthetics.
the small picture doesn't work, the big picture doesn't work as well either. I almost have always, on my teams, always had a first lieutenant that was a beaver, and and kind of an intuitive beaver, somebody that knew what was going on with the team, because super important. If the team is failing, the task fails. And that person needs to remind me the team is failing.
Yeah. We're not getting along right now.
So we're going to fail at the task eventually. Oh, I see. Okay, motivation for me. I want to get the task done. Let's get the morale up. Make it a task, right? So let's make it a game, or let's make it a activity where we're sharing what's good or whatever. Let's make it a celebration. Then I can embrace it a little bit more. If you just say, we're going to have a party, okay.
A party just for the sake of a party, I don't like that either. Isn't that funny? But there are some people that's
neither
what they
one of us
for.
have otter in us, right? We have otter, but we just don't have a lot of otter.
It's really low.
Yeah. We have
it can come out once in a while.
And we like being around otters because
they're the fun people.
They do liven it up a good bit. I can get tired of otters. If I had an otter as a mate, I'd have problems.
Or a roommate. I've had some otter roommates who wore me out.
Yeah.
They just want to party all the time. And well, not always, but they can be kind of messy, which also is an issue with me. As a beaver, I want things neat and tidy and clean. So
good.
So why are people so excited about knowing about their personality type, but do so little with that knowledge, and what could they do?
Yeah, that's a little bit what we just shared about. It's kind of like having a dog and being super excited about the color and the cuteness, but not knowing the potential of the dog. It's amazing what we can train our dogs to do, but almost everybody undervalues the potential, or they just want the relational lovey-dovey dog, which is fine. But here's what I would encourage you is, as with this dog, your personality has a lot of influence over almost everything. And so understanding that, and understanding that you need to understand yourself and how do you respond in adversity. And this is where the Enneagram is really helpful, is what comes out when you're pressured is different than what comes out when you're doing well. And so your own mental health as you're going into a situation will change your personality, sometimes very significantly. And being able to recognize that, for me, my personality can run people over if I see the task as being most important. Here's an example. We're leaving and we're doing staff training at our camp. We're leaving for a thing, and I told everybody, be here by 8:50 a.m. And it's 8:50, and there's 2 people that aren't there. I am ready to go. But if I'm smart, I'll leave behind a phlegmatic person that can explain to the people why I left. And
because they're kind-hearted.
right, and they're faithful, and they'll be okay. And I can rely on that person to get those people there more often
Interesting.
the next time, right? So now I'm using it. So if you knew everybody in your family's personality type, you could do better in terms of managing your family vacation. Some people
For
need,
sure, we did that with our family of 7.
yes, and at times compromise was what we had to go for, and some people, we don't have a good bit of compromise in our family per se, and so that's meant I had to say we're going to compromise, okay, and gave. We have 3 strong leaders, maybe 4 strong leaders in our family, and in that, it made it, I had to kind of relieve them of the need to make decisions and to lead the group at this point. So, yeah.
Yeah, by the way, I'm an Enneagram 4, so I am, you're right, you said I'm more creative. I really do like to spend time in the details and the beauty of things.
In the history of
In
things.
the history of things. And you're like, when are we going to get this done?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And I like to enjoy those things as long as I don't have a task that's trying to be accomplished. So if I can categorize this as, okay, this is just a history time, or this is just an art time, then I'm okay. So just giving me, that's why when we drive somewhere, it's one of the very first things we do is what are our expectations? And that's a lot of it too, is personality types allow you to manage expectations.
For sure.
Everybody has a different expectation going in. An otter is going to say, who do I get to connect with? And the phlegmatic is going to connect with that otter, and then they're going to expect the otter to come back. The horse expects that person to come back to them. And that's not what the otter is about. The otter is about quick and fun relationships. The horse is about deep and steady.
Long term. Yeah, good. How can people learn about their emotional grid or personality?
Probably there's more resources than there have ever been. We just have stumbled upon a resource where you can take a test and it'll give you a reading on about 4 or 5 different personality types. And we're probably going to use that test with you. You have to pay, but it's like $25. And for me, that's extremely reasonable considering the resources that it gives you. Because it not only tells you your personality, but it tells you good careers that you'd be good at and positions that you should find yourself in. So the internet has really opened this up. But we do the DISC test, we do the Enneagram test, or tests like that. There is the Taylor-Johnson, there's the Myers-Briggs, there's the is it Pathfinder? And then there's
I don't even remember all of them.
Yeah, there's a plethora of them. That's why I like this one test, because it really, it asks you, I think, 40 questions, and it'll give you feedback on all of these different tests.
It's the APT test online, and you can find it at tryapt.ai.
Yeah, but it's really valuable. But I would tell you that it's not as valuable as when you have a coach, because a coach is going to stand back and say, now, how has this affected your relationships? And you're going to doubt the personality test in some ways, and some of it is justified. So I know you've taken the Enneagram test. Why don't you tell them you kind of journeyed for your...
So it took me almost 2 years to figure out my Enneagram number. So the test didn't really work. I actually had to get several books, and listen to many podcasts on different Enneagram numbers, and to be able to figure it out, because the test kept saying that I was a 7, which is an otter. And I know I'm not an otter, but I think I had enough adventurous side to me, and that creativity, and just I like change, Well, those are odder characteristics, but I also found out, okay, it can lend itself to the Enneagram 4 really well. So I fit more with the 4.
One of the questions I think we're going to wrestle with is, can you trust personality tests?
That was another
You
question.
can trust them, but they may be asking a question and you may be answering different on a different wavelength. In other words, they can ask a question with a certain tendency, and then you just think about a situation you just had, and so you react to that situation. And I've changed. My DISC test scores
Right.
have changed
Mine
over
too.
the years. So does that mean that I've changed, or does that mean that it was a wrong interpretation? Probably a little bit of both. In other words, it probably wasn't an exactly accurate interpretation, but it probably means that I've changed as well. I've interpreted the world differently. I've interpreted myself differently. Sometimes people are a little bit afraid on personality tests to, I tell people, be more than less. In other words, try to not find yourself. Some of them are more medium, less. Try to not find yourself in the middle brackets as often, and you'll probably get a better sense of your true personality. Also, try to react quickly rather than think about it, because thinking about it, you kind of, what is this person? What are they trying to get at? Oh, do I want to be known as that kind of person? And you hyper evaluate
Well,
too
I
much.
can relate to that because I want to be more like an 8. Or sorry, not an 8. Sorry, you're an 8. I want to be more like a 7.
Yeah, I don't want anything to do with what you are.
I've known some wonderful people who are 8s and some people who aren't so great. So I really wanted to be a 7. Even as a kid, I wanted to be a 7. They're the most fun, playful. They have the most friends. They're the most outgoing. They just are popular. I just wanted to be, in other words, an otter type.
Yeah.
So when I took the test, even as when I started taking these tests when I was pretty young, so I would skew toward that otter because it was what I wanted. Well, interestingly enough, when I really figured out I'm an Enneagram 4 was, oh, they're always looking at the flaws in themselves and what they wish they could be like. That's definitely me.
There you go. And you were showing that on the very taking
exactly,
of the test. Yeah.
Exactly. So that is the classic Enneagram 4. I'm looking for, how can I be more like that person? I'm missing those qualities that I want.
Yeah. So I would say you can trust them, but not 100%. You always need to evaluate what they're telling you and say, is this really true or is this not true? And they're going to show tendencies, not 100% for sure.
Yeah. So, Pete.
Julie.
You know what? We already answered these questions.
Some of them we did.
So Pete, how do you think your personality affects your life calling?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I did when I was really kind of doing my life story thing is I started circling similarities in the verbs. And in the verbs, I kept saying leading, facilitating, organizing, instructing, teaching. Yeah. And so I said, okay, that is part of my personality, right? Is I always want to tell people which way to go. What's the better way? I want to think through, I want to look at the big picture. And as an eagle, so an otter is only looking at their particular world, but an eagle is looking at a much broader picture. Then I want to say to the otter, the water's going that way. So my personality obviously needs to complement my calling. So if I'm not leading, I'm not fulfilled. I need a team. And I know that I need a person alongside to worry about the details, because I'm very concerned that the details are covered, but I don't want to cover the details. In other words, I want somebody to make sure, but if somebody else can. I've got right now, I'm in a pickleball group.
I was just going to say, you should share this example.
Yeah. And in the pickleball group, there's a beaver that is the current president, and I'm the past president. And when we do an event, I cover the main ideas, and he covers, here's the rules for everybody. And you can tell he loves covering the rules.
Yeah.
And he kind of talks about his pet peeves, and I say, Ted, get off that. Let's get to let's start playing, okay? That kind of thing. And so knowing my personality means that I can adapt my situation to more of my life calling. One of the things I do is I change cultures. So if a culture is super healthy, I don't know that I'm needed as much. I'm not as motivated as in a culture that's trying to, we want to organize and we want to get this part.
This is so true with Kidder Creek Camp. When you first became the director there was a lot that needed to be changed.
There was chaos.
Organized, yes, total chaos. And you loved it. That's what you live on. That's what fulfills you. You're fulfilling your calling when you see a mess and you know how to fix it.
And I can influence people to say, here's the bigger picture. But then once it started humming, I got bored. Yeah, and I stepped out and resigned at that point because I didn't want to just be checking in. It also changed the structure a little bit, and I became more of a manager and less of a leader. And I realized my calling is not to manage. It's to lead. It's to bring people to a new place, a new culture. The more I can own my personality, sorry about that little guy, the more I can own my personality, the more I can realize, okay, that's when it works really well, and that's when it doesn't work really well. One of the things that's happening with Marble Mountain Kennels is it has less influence on people, and that's not very motivating to me. I can train these dogs, and the nice thing is the dogs really respect me, probably more than the average trainer, but it's just a little too much monotony for me because I know I can do it.
Well, when it was a brand new business for you, well, I should say a fledgling business because you started it long ago, it was more fun because there were so many challenges in fixing this or that. But now you have it running pretty smoothly, and we have a kennel manager who's taking over, so it's a little boring.
Yeah. So now I want to lean into True North because that's where more excitement, more influence. It's more big picture.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. You want to say goodbye to the folks?
Okay. Well, we probably should sign out now, but it's been fun hanging out with you. Thanks for learning about personalities. And don't forget that if you want to coach with us sometime, you can call us and book an appointment with us, and we'll be happy to coach you. We can do individual coaching, we can do group coaching, and we do workshops, and we're still talking about doing those cruises at some point where we take a group on a cruise. I think that will be super fun.
Yeah, and if you want a Labrador Retriever, call us as well.
Okay, we'll zoom in on the puppy. We want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Today's episode of Your Best Life was brought to you by True North Quests, helping you discover your calling so you can live a life filled with purpose. Find out more at tnadventures.org, where you can book an appointment with a calling coach, learn about upcoming True North Quest workshops, and more. And by Marble Mountain Kennels, where exceptional Labrador Retrievers are bred and trained for adventure, companionship, and service. Visit mmkennels.com to meet your new best canine friend. And by Julie's Creative Classroom, providing fun educational games and digital products for students in Julie's online Creative Classroom TPT Teachers Pay Teachers store. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, remember your best life starts with knowing your calling and finding your true north.